Mr Deputy Speaker, and can I say that I will remember the days when same-sex couples were denied basic rights, next of kin relationships weren't recognised, pension rights were not available to surviving partners, and discrimination on property and inheritance issues was widespread. Civil partnerships recognised same-sex relationships in law for the first time, and I am extremely proud that it was a Labour government with all-party support that passed that legislation through this House of Commons. Well, legislation isn't built on sentiment, Mr Deputy Speaker, it's built on fact. And I have to say to members across the whole House that whilst that legislation unequivocally broke the back of unlawful discrimination, this proposal doesn't end any discrimination whatsoever and has the potential to open up a can of worms of Olympian magnitude. I have to confess that I am also bitterly disappointed about the manner in which people's genuine concerns in this matter have been dismissed by government ministers. Logic has been responded to with platitudes, and there has been no greater example of that, or no greater offender than the Secretary of State. I will come on to that in a bit more detail in a moment, but I wanted to ensure that my views were recorded in this debate, because I don't agree with comments from people who are clearly steeped in bigotry and hatred. My concerns are based on three considerations. The first is that this bill, should it become law, will give no new rights to any same-sex couples in England or Wales, and it's a complete fabrication to suggest that it's about equality. Indeed, if you read Stonewall's briefing on this matter, an organisation I greatly admire, there is no mention whatsoever in there about new rights. Secondly, I believe very strongly that the state should have no role in marriage whatsoever. Any couple, same-sex or not, should have access to civil partnerships or unions, because if this is really truly about changing definitions and then setting them into law, then for goodness sake, let's do it properly. Allow the state to properly recognise relationships, treat all people equally, and allow equal access to all mechanisms of the state. And by doing so, we would then eliminate the controversy which arises when we start to use the same terminology as churches. And that brings me to my third reason for opposing this bill. Mr Deputy Speaker, on the 11th of December, the Secretary of State said this: "I know that many honourable members are worried about that European courts will force religious organisations to conduct same-sex marriages. The law is complex, but that complexity is absolutely no excuse for misunderstanding the facts. Case law of the European Court of Human Rights and rights set out in the European Convention on Human Rights put protection of religious belief in this matter beyond doubt. The Government's legal position is confirmed that with appropriate legislative drafting, the chance of a successful legal challenge through domestic or European courts is negligible." So, I will give way.
Very grateful to him. Would he confirm whether he knows of any case in any of the other European Union countries where same-sex marriage is already allowed, where there has been a prosecution of someone for holding the view that same-sex marriage should not be allowed?
For that intervention, because I'm going to go on to that point right now, because the much-vaunted quadruple lock is underpinned by case law. And what we all know in this House is that what makes case law is cases. And I am absolutely damn sure, as sure as the sun rises in the morning, that a same-sex couple will go to a church or a synagogue, they'll make a demand to be married, that demand will be refused, and they will go to a court. They, in turn, will have to wait to see, we will have to wait to see, in turn, what new case law is created. And by that time, Mr Deputy Speaker, none of us may be serving in this House. We may have left politics altogether, or indeed we may have left this mortal coil. But people will look back in that set of circumstances and they'll say this: how did we get into this mess? And then they'll look back in Hansard and they'll say it's because we made a bad law back in 2013. And some politician said at the time that there was a quadruple lock underpinned by case law. I'll give way.
Member for giving way. But if we project forward into the future, is it not also the case that some churches may have changed their mind in the way that they have over the blessing of civil partnerships, and in the way that, clearly even parts of the Church of England, certainly the parts of the Church of Wales, already have expressed the desire to go further than this legislation allows? Society will evolve, but so also will the Church's views.
Well, that may very well be the case, but under my proposition, which separates a recognition of unions and partnerships by the state and partnerships that churches recognise, then it would make sure that there was no confusion between state and church, and therefore there would be a clear distinction in law. And that's why I'm upset about what's being proposed today, because when we do look back, and because the quadruple lock that's been proposed has been put forward by the Secretary of State is to be supported by case law, then I'm afraid that you have to reach the conclusion that if case law changes, then the opportunities of the argument the Secretary of State is making actually falls. So, in terms of my position, Mr Deputy Speaker, when I came into Parliament, I made a personal vow that I would never vote knowingly for a poor bill or for a poor piece of legislation. And I may unintentionally do that in my time in this place, but I'm not going to do it when I know that what is in front of me is a poorly constructed bill which in turn could become a poorly constructed law. And that's why this evening I'll be voting against this bill at second reading, and that is my position which I want to place on the record.
Peter Bone.
Mr Deputy Speaker, it is a great pleasure to follow the honourable member for East Kilbride, and his very last point when he said you should never vote for something that you know is a bad bill. What a statement for Parliament and for parliamentarians. It's a sad